Welcome back, everyone. This is your host, Rashad Woods at the T.R.O.N podcast. My special guest for today, an entrepreneur in Nashville, Tennessee, all-around nice guy, a self-described entrepreneur, avid reader, traveler, and networker, Mr. Dylan Meiselwick. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you being on the show, man. You have such a varied background. You started with a mechanical engineering degree. How did you venture into, your toes that you got into the fields that you're into now?
Essentially, while working as an engineer, I kind of got bored at work. I'd finished some work, I'd ask for more, and I wouldn't have any. So eventually I got caught up watching YouTube, got hit with an ad by Ty Lopez that suggested I should read. And I'm like, that's interesting. And after joking with one of my coworkers about it, I ended up getting a couple audiobooks, which were the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and How to Win Friends and Influence People. So 2 of the best self-help books of all time. The weird thing was at that point, I had never finished a full-length book in my life, and I was 24 years old. So yeah, I basically was like, oh, yeah, like I don't see the purpose in reading because I grew up as Google came out. So Google was existing while I was in high school, and I'm like, I'll never need to read a textbook because I can just Google it. And if it's a good enough fictional story, it'll be turned into a movie, and I can save myself 18 hours of reading.
Correct.
So I didn't have this desire to read. I didn't see the purpose of it. But once I got exposed to those 2 books, I was like, whoa, like these are books I didn't know existed, this nonfiction world that weren't textbooks. And so essentially it put me down a rabbit hole of exploration where I realized that I had been doing marketing a good portion of my life in various aspects, and especially in college when I was in a fraternity. And I helped double the size of our fraternity when I took over our rush chair, and I held our 75th anniversary for our alumni gathering, which was incredible. I ended up doing social media marketing and event marketing, and I did email marketing. I was all over the place, and I didn't know that's what I was doing. I was just trying to help my organization. And so I had played with graphic design. I had done all these different things. And then one day I'm reading books now as an engineer, bored at work. And I'm like, oh yeah, like I kind of like this marketing thing. And so I just started playing with it on the side. And basically, while playing with that on the side, I started looking for clients, and I found someone looking for a graphic designer, but what they really meant was comic book illustrator, which I am not. But basically, I opened up the Craigslist post anyways, and I was like, oh, that's not something I could do, but I could build you a logo. Ended up meeting up with that guy, ended up becoming friends. So I went from starting a marketing company to now I have a comic book company.
Yeah, I saw that. What's it called? Seer Nova?
Seer Nova, like seeing, like seer. So Seer Nova, which basically means to see an explosion of new, right? So like Nova is like entering of new. But so I started Seer Nova Comics with my friend. And then a few years after that, I ended up leaving my engineering job, doing marketing full time. And my brother, who was here in Nashville, I was still in upstate New York at the time, was like, hey, all 3 of my roommates are moving out 1 month after the next. I don't have anybody else to like take their place yet. You want to come down? So I convinced my cousin, who's a former Marine, or always a Marine, right? But basically he had a disability, so he was staying at home the whole time. So I'm like, hey, you want to come down to Nashville with me?
Pack the bags, let's go.
So he was like, hell yeah. So we ended up going down, and that was 2019, October. And then essentially COVID happened, locked us indoors. And I'm like, hey, let's do something. And my brother and I decided to start a podcast in the music industry. And that essentially opened up a whole realm where we networked with people. And then that finally led into the music business. So all these things kind of just kept tumbling into each other as I was moving along.
But the point thing is, things kind of worked organically with you, right? And what I found interesting was you go from a tech institute in upstate New York that story alone is so fascinating to me. Then you're doing engineering, you go into graphic arts, and it moved organically. It's all because you took the initiative to network and just talk to people.
Yeah, and honestly, a lot of the other things that have happened since then have mostly been networking, talking with people, exploring new things, and learning new things. So like, for example, I've got a pile of books, literally just sitting next to me, basically wherever I am most of the time. I'm always trying to learn new things. I take online classes. And I think one of the biggest things in how I got into a lot of random spaces was I wanted something done. I didn't know anyone who could do it. So then I learned it myself.
Exactly.
So like I dabbled with graphic design like in 8th grade. That's like the only real thing I did beforehand. I just played with it because a friend of mine happened to have Photoshop. And then later I'm in school and I want to do social media, like our Facebook page. No one else knows how to do it. So I just figured out how it works. And then from there, it was like, we needed help with the website. So I learned a little bit of web design. And then
Right.
I kept doing that until eventually I learned the entire Adobe Master Collection. And
That's
now
incredible.
like at some point in time, I have made money with everything from, audio editing for podcasts to websites and SEO to graphic design, logo design, animations, book
Self-taught.
publishing. Yeah, just one after another, just kept like taking these on. And now it's like, okay, how can I apply these to other various, fields? And then that
Correct.
opened up one door and then another door and then another door.
So yeah, and what's crazy about it is that you obviously have done very successful when it comes to brand building. Now, when it comes to books and somebody who needs to be an avid reader, what were the benefits that you said open your mind up to reading nonfiction books, the success books, the steps to success? Because all the books, the knowledge are out there. People who are successful want to share it with people. What made you say, how did your mindset change when you started reading?
So what actually happened was after I made fun of that ad that I saw, my coworker next to me was like, "Oh, I actually used to read a lot," and I made the joke. I'm like, I haven't finished a full-length book my entire life. Not a joke, but it's funny. Like,
right.
I forged signatures in grammar school, and I threw out my summer reading in high school. I just never read that. It's funny. I graduated salutatorian. I just was really good at figuring out what I needed to know to just get by.
For sure.
And so what ended up happening was he goes, "Well, have you ever tried audiobooks?" And so because I've never desired to read, why would I choose another form of reading?
Absolutely.
So he gave me these 2 audiobooks. It happened to be the only ones he had. So
right.
I'm listening to it on my way to and from work, the 7 Habits specifically. And he talks about in the beginning, which luckily, because if I had physically read this book, I think I'd have been bored to death. Now I could read it. But back then, my brain would not have been able to digest that.
Right.
And what happened was the beginning of the book, I'm playing it at like 2.5 speed or whatever, because I'm trying to it's boring.
Power through it.
They talk about the paradigm shifts and how reality are principles. This is what, unchanging things. But we don't see the principles of reality. We just see our paradigms, which are the maps we hold in front of our face.
Right.
And sometimes you're given enough information to realize your map is incorrect that you make a change. And that's called a paradigm shift.
Got it.
And sometimes you are given such compelling information that you rewrite a whole section or maybe even your entire map. And that is called an aha moment. And I am listening to that on my ride to work, which I don't enjoy my work at the time because I'm bored. I try to advance. I can't. I'm stuck. I don't have enough experience, but they won't give me the experience. And now I'm listening to this on my way to work, literally having an aha moment while being told what one is. And I'm like, holy crap, this is what's in real books. And I ended up flying through that book. I started listening to it while I was at work. I used to only listen to it on the way to and from work. I then listened to the second book. And before I even finished it, I went on Amazon and bought my first 4 books, which the interesting thing and how I got into marketing is that all I did was, so Ty Lopez, just because he's the one who just introduced me to reading, he had a list on his website. It still exists today of his top 100 favorite books. And so what I did was, I'm like, I don't know which of these are good. So I just took them all, put them into an Amazon wish list, and whatever went on sale is what I got. So the first 4 that I got were just like the ones that were like the cheapest ones, which were Managing Oneself by Peter Drucker, which is also one of his top 10. And it's very, very short. I highly recommend it to you. Sam Walton's Made in America, which is like, the entrepreneur of entrepreneurs.
Of course.
A book I've actually never completed, but I've skimmed through it, which was Tested Advertising Methods. And the 4th one was Confessions of an Advertising Man by David Ogilvy. And so because those happened to go on sale and I read those and I enjoyed those, for example, like David Ogilvy was in like finance or economics before he got into marketing. And I was in engineering and mathematics. So like it was this idea that you don't have to come from that space to do it. In fact, because he didn't, he was better. He looked at it analytically, not artistically. And that's how I entered the space. That was definitely the big awakening, was like that. Those first set of books kind of inspired me to go, wow, I can explore more. And just happenstance, serendipity, I read these other books due to the fact they were on sale.
Yeah, right. And so, and what's crazy is you go to your website and you literally have the percentage of what book you've completed. And then you have the library of all the books that you had. I'm like, oh my God, like this is insane, right? And I've noticed that a lot of people consume information, but they have very short attention spans because a book requires a significant amount of actual listening. If you're going to discern and take that information to the next level, it can't just be something passive or haphazard. You really have to take something from it.
The interesting thing too, there's a lot of books on meta learning, which is like the getting better at learning.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I noticed was I used to have terrible memory. And I remember, what's his name? Jim Quick talks about this. Like, if you say you have bad memory, then what is it? You get to keep the limitations you fight for, or something like that.
Right.
You know, so if you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them, right? So I stopped saying that in general, just because I heard that phrase at some point. And I realized that I would read a couple of books and I couldn't remember what was in them. I kept having to re-reference them. Right. And then one day, I think I said something to my mom at some point, maybe over the holidays, and she had asked me a question because of it. And I was like, oh, you should, here's an idea you should consider. And right. I remember lifting up a book and opening up to the exact page that I was looking for. I literally was on the phone with my mom. I dropped the book. I was like, oh shit. I was like, that was weird.
Yeah. Like, another aha moment.
Yeah. Well, what I had realized was I knew exactly what I was looking for. And all of a sudden I realized I could remember huge chunks of information from the books I had read. And it was after I had completed the 10th book. Like I noticed it was like I'd finished 10 books and suddenly my memory like spiked. Right. And I learned later this is due to neuroplasticity. So what I had done was, like, our brains are meant to do only two things: keep us alive and conserve energy for when we need to keep ourselves alive.
Are you serious?
So yeah, that's all it is. Everything else is just an illusion that we trick ourselves into doing. And
that's awesome. And kind of scary too.
By forcing myself to read these books, my brain went, wow, that's taking up a lot of time. And every time I tried to remember it, my brain is working overtime trying to remember it. So what it does is it actually rewires itself to make it easier to find this information. And I actually learned this, like, certainly later when I read a book on language learning. There's actually a strategy of a system of learning called SRS, which is Spatial Repetition Systems. Okay. And what you do is you learn something new. So, like, I want to learn, book in Portuguese. So I'm like, livro. And then I put that away till tomorrow. And then I check it again today or the next day. And I'm like, livro. Okay, I remember that means book. Now I wait a week, right? Now, do I remember it after a week? Good. Wait 2 weeks until the next one. Still remember it? Wait a month. Wait 3 months. Wait 6 months. If you get to 6 months and you can still remember that thing that you haven't talked about in 6 months, you've now memorized it.
Got it.
And so the goal is to get to like a point where you almost forget what it was. And you have to stress your brain. You're like, what was that thing? Yes, that thing. And it's funny because you probably inherently know that because there's something where you're in a conversation with someone, you're like, damn, what was that guy's name? And now you never forget that person's name because you had to work so hard to get it that it's just ingrained in there now.
We're going to float back to that topic in a minute, but because you hit some very good points right there. And I wanted to talk about your artistic development design company you founded in 2016. Called, can you explain what that company does?
Yeah, so basically we offer digital marketing services and marketing consulting. It started off with stuff like, Facebook ads, I think I'm trying to think. No, actually it started off with web development. That was the first entry point because I realized after I had learned that at the time, most of the people that knew web development were just WordPress developers that just threw together themes and they didn't really know what they were doing. And I became a full stack developer. I had learned all of the basis of programming for a website. And I even learned PHP, which apparently nobody else learns. So that got me into a bunch of rooms where I had been studying now. So now I'm reading books while I'm helping a client. And then I would give them a piece of advice. I would help them here and help them there. I'm like, oh, you should do this. You should do that. Eventually, I realized I keep telling them like they should use Facebook ads. I know they work, but I'm not running them. So then I went and I think that was one of the first programs I ever bought. It was a $700 program from Ty Lopez about how to create a social media marketing agency. So in there, they teach you how to run Facebook ads. So I did all that, learned how to do Facebook ads, and then I started offering that to clients.
Nice.
That kept expanding. Initially, I did SEO, Google Ads, other various marketing, basically anything you can think about marketing, email marketing, automations, funnel building, etc. So I just kind of kept expanding. And then one day, one of my friends actually called for advice. I gave them a bunch of advice and they're like, you should think about getting into consulting. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like it never crossed my mind as opposed to just doing the service themselves to get into general consulting and strategy. And so within like a month or two of that person suggesting it, I ended up getting my first consulting client, which then became a consulting service client. So I gave them a bunch of advice. They agreed with it. And then they had me do all the work. And I'm like, wow, that's really nice. So that's kind of what I do for that. I work with solopreneurs, small business owners, startups, and corporations. I've worked with the owners to the direct marketing directors, and I've helped with real estate, education, health and fitness, healthcare, technology, food and beverage.
I saw you open up a real estate firm actually with your brother as well too, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's mostly us in the exploratory phases. We're
Still,
basically so I started learning about real estate a while ago. One of my clients is actually a real estate investor, and so I kind of just learned as much as I could about him so I could help him.
right,
And then I became friends with him, learned a little bit more, and then a few years later, my brother started getting into real estate. So now
right,
he's learning it. He's taken a couple programs, and now we're at that phase where it's like, okay, where can we start looking for things? So my brother
correct.
actually is getting into what's it called? Like I forgot the type of company, but it's like essentially opening up PO boxes, but not through the
Got it.
USPS.
Got
And
it.
so he's been getting so his real estate knowledge is now helping because they're looking for a location for that and being able
Right.
to evaluate them. So it's been pretty.
Now, what's great, what you said earlier when it mentioned about learning another language, you mentioned Portuguese, and I saw obviously, that was very important for you to learn that language. You also know Japanese as well too, which I was
It's a
a li-
super small amount.
and the little time that I've spent actually trying to like understand that is a monstrous language to learn, right? For especially
I can still read all of the hiragana and katakana characters, so like I know how to pronounce
that's great.
words
That's
if they're
awesome.
written like that, and then I probably recognize maybe another. I used to recognize something like 300 characters in kanji, but now it's probably down to like 50 because I haven't
Right.
done it in so long. Eventually, I want to pick that back up and then visit Japan.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
yeah, the biggest thing I learned was it's true for all types of learning. When you learn a bunch about something, even though it's irrelevant to the usage of the word, it
Right.
actually helps you remember it. So,
Correct.
for example, the symbol for water in Japanese, mitsu, right? This symbol looks very similar to the symbol for swimming, which is
Wow.
oyogimasu, right?
Yeah.
Which doesn't sound anything the same, but if you look at them, it
Yeah.
shows the symbol and then like movement over it, like you're swimming over water.
So you have to really be visual. It's not good enough just to stare at that when you look at the symbol behind it and what it actually means.
Yeah, and then the coolest one I found was if you ever played like Yu-Gi-Oh, there's Umi, which is the ocean or the sea.
Right.
And I remember looking at that and going, that symbol looks familiar. And I had to like look really close and I'm like, oh my God, it's one word I recognize and then water again. And I go, I think I know what that word is, like mai or something like that. And
Right.
like mai nichi, yes, yeah, I was like every day, mai nichi. So like mai mitsu is like
Right.
umi means water everywhere. I
Correct.
was like, oh my God. So like I'll never forget that umi means water along with tying it to a Yu-Gi-Oh card, which has nothing to do with knowing the word. You know what I mean? So it's by having
Right.
all of this random information, those types of words I won't forget.
But it also really actually, I'm in the process of learning different languages. Working on learning Dutch right now, not Dutch German, but actually, just because I'm like, well, you don't really interact with that language stateside. So I was like, let me
Yeah.
just try to learn something completely different. And what's interesting about it is you listen, but you really have to like close your eyes. And the weird part, just in my brief learning in this language, is there's very big similarity. It's not as painful as you think it can be because you start hearing the word and your brain starts saying, yeah, that kind of could make sense. I hear from a different language perspective how that word actually operates and how it's actually saying. And then you kind of have to sound like a little kid and overemphasize the word, right, to make sure you say it correctly. It's really weird. Like,
The fun thing with language learnings, because I chose Japanese first, so I did French like in high school. I actually got really good, but the way that I learned it is why I don't remember it.
right.
So I've read probably 2 or 3 books on language learning, and one of the biggest ones, that SRS was very helpful. The
Mhm.
other biggest one I learned was essentially do like the second you start learning, start speaking it, and then don't ever stop speaking it.
No
And
doubt. No
no
doubt.
matter what
No doubt.
software you use, it doesn't matter how good it is. It just matters that you use it every day. So,
Absolutely.
for example, my wife's Brazilian,
Right.
hence learning Portuguese. And so,
Yes.
because of that, I know her Brazilian friends that live in this area and
Mhm.
then their spouses, right?
Right.
And of all of their spouses, all of them have given up on language. Like, they haven't given up, but they're like, oh, I haven't done it in a while. But they
Right.
were all using a better app than like Duolingo. So, I happen to
Right.
use Duolingo because it's gamified. And I know that
Absolutely.
I don't want to lose my almost 1,000-day streak now. I can't, you know what I mean? So I'm like, I don't want to break that.
Right.
And that alone is enough that I didn't stop. And
Right.
that allowed me, so I went to Brazil in August, and that allowed me to be able to communicate with her family while I was there.
Right.
And
Right.
I just wouldn't have been able to do that had I used some better application that was a little harder to log into or took too much time to use.
When they got the little bird up there that's like waving to you, like
he's laser beams at me now. He's all mad at me. So it's like, yeah, I love it. But like that really is so important.
Right.
And so the biggest thing is like having a reason to learn a language is so powerful, because like I don't ever want to stop learning Portuguese. So even if I add another language later, I'm still going to want to speak Portuguese.
It's an invaluable tool just to be able to actually like speak a sentence or two. Like it literally feels like a superpower. Like you're just like, oh my gosh, I actually like in my brief little moment of self, I accomplished speaking something else in a full sentence. And it's a feeling you really can't take away, because then you're like, you got to be kidding me. If you hear it audio wise, you're like, I actually understood what that meant. Right.
Yeah. Oh, that was the thing I was thinking of, the understanding how things sound. So when I learned Japanese, I learned that the reason that they like arigato, like the R sound, they don't have an L sound in their language, but they actually don't really have that R sound either. Their R sound, if you look at an international phonetic alphabet, it's in this big peak between an R and an L. And the actual phonetic alphabet is an R with a J like attached to the underside of it.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's not arigato, it's arigato, right? It's a sound that like we don't say in English. In fact, if you to an adult Japanese person who's never spoken English and never met anyone who speaks English, if you said rice and lice, their ears would hear identical sounds.
Oh wow.
Yeah, because their brain's interpreting the sound, so they pull out what the information that's valuable. That's why, for example, when I was learning Portuguese, I would hear "homem," right? And that just sounds like one word. Right. And what it really is "homem," like the man. But in Portuguese, like the words that are closer together kind of blend in. But if you know that they're there, you can hear them.
Right.
But for the first, I don't know, maybe year that I was doing it, there was tons of times where there was a word there, like, and then it starts with again, right? And they blend together, and I just can't hear it. And then eventually there's just one day where I heard it, and now I don't stop hearing it. I'm like, there it is. I hear it now. So it's like our brains are trained for that.
What's interesting is just the placement of verbs in different languages too, because then you have to make sure, I can't tell you how many times I've seen it. You knew what the word was and didn't put the verb in correct. And I'm probably messing up the vocabulary here, but if you don't put the action word before the term you said, it didn't matter. You completely said the sentence out of order. So
yeah, well, that was super funny. Is like the Romance languages are typically pretty close. The only thing that's weird is maybe they have adjectives in weird places. Or for example, if we would say like his car, and in Portuguese be like o carro dele, right? So the car of him.
Right.
Things like that. But like in Japanese, for example, the what's it called? The focus person or like object is in the beginning of the sentence, like always, and the verb is always at the end.
Oh wow.
Right? So like, watashi wa yogimasu, right? Like I swim, right? But if you say I swim at the beach, you have to be like I at the beach swim.
Okay.
Right? Okay. It always ends in a verb. So yeah, it's a super. So like there are certain languages, where it's like totally like not even close. So, and the interesting thing is the way that you eventually become fluent in a language is you're not translating anymore. So like as I was learning Japanese, I would like force myself to be like, let me just say it in Japanese and interpret it with like visuals. Like I can't translate it because it's too much. And so one day I remember I was at a Japanese restaurant and the waitress, I said something in Japanese intentionally to provoke something. She said something. I knew exactly what she said. And then I was like, how do I say that in English? But I knew what she said. I interpreted it. And I've done that now in Portuguese a lot, where like I'll understand and respond. Like my wife will sometimes accidentally say something in Portuguese and I'll respond in English because I know what she said.
Correct.
But I don't think about it for a second.
But the first thing was your natural native English language.
Yeah.
So I know you've also got your toe dipped a bit in artificial intelligence as well too. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, actually, so I'll definitely say I'm not fully dove in like some people where like everything in their entire life now is AI, and it's mostly due to budget restraints because I don't want to be I would buy every single one of these software. I was saying when ChatGPT first came out, I played with it for a little while. Eventually, I kept hitting the limit. I bought it, and I'm like, they could charge me $100 a month, and I would pay for it easily. I have now taught almost every one of my clients how to use it, and they're
that's
all
fantastic
because of it. one of my clients now has the $200 a month version, and I was like, "That's awesome!" And he's gonna give me access to it so I can play with it.
Right.
But it's super interesting, and now it's to the point where, I actually have my first paid speaking gig where I'll actually be speaking for Vanderbilt, teaching on AI, which is awesome.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And so it's definitely something where I wasn't sure about it, and then I was like, absolutely, this is everything. So now, like right before this, I was working on a proposal for a potential SEO client, and I'm using ChatGPT, talking back and forth with it.
That's awesome.
And then I use Notion as another tool to organize it.
See, but the thing is, because you're so adept at switching between different mediums, industries, and you're constantly seeking knowledge, that would seem like it was a pretty seamless transition for you. It was just another tool that came out that you said, let me dive into. You already know Adobe, so you're fully knowing that I'm going to learn this software. I'm okay going head in first, and it will come to me because I'm going to put in the hours required of me to do it.
I think that the combination of, something I actually learned while working with a mentor of mine was I couldn't figure out what made me unique in marketing, because I worked with so many, like I said, I've worked with solopreneurs and I've worked with 500 person corporations in size. And I've worked with, education all the way to like technology. So it's like a very broad range of companies. So I didn't know like what makes me stand out, because I don't want to narrow by niche, because what happened was in 2019, at that point, I worked in health and fitness. My clients were CrossFit gym, indoor rock climbing gym, a martial arts studio. I was clearly in health and fitness.
Right.
And what ended up happening was 2020. And of all
everything got shut down.
Health and fitness was one of the first. And health and fitness, alongside like restaurants, closed when they were reopened. They were forced at half capacity. Nobody needs a marketer to fill half a gym.
Right.
So I lost all my clients, all my prospects, and all my leads. Yeah, immediately.
And that's when you realized you had to diversify, because the circumstances that were beyond your control took place.
Yeah, and so what happened was, after I diversified, I was able to keep up. Like, I didn't really stagger at all with new clients. I just learned about their industry, which that was the other thing, is because I loved learning, I would learn everything I could about them, and now I knew more about their business than they did, right? So I kept doing that, business over business. I worked with tons of different industries very quickly. And one day I was talking with my mentor, probably within the last 6 to 8 months. And he had asked me a question. And this guy works in tech and works in marketing. He's in his 70s, he's been doing it forever. And he was asking me a question, and I was able to explain it to him very like succinctly.
Right.
And at the end, after he was done, he was like thanking me for helping him. And I was like, I think I figured that out. And he goes, yeah, that's why. And he even said, this is why I asked you this, that my superpower is the fact that I think because I learned web development and programming, and I'm very adaptable at learning new things, including foreign languages, I had made it so that I can open any piece of software and learn it in minutes.
Right.
So, for example, I actually had a client. Do you know what Go High Level is?
I've heard the terminology.
Do you know what ClickFunnels is?
Briefly, yeah, briefly.
So ClickFunnels is just a funnel building software. So it builds websites, but the websites are specifically sales funnels, lead generation funnels, etc. Go High Level was the biggest competitor that came against them, and now they might have actually surpassed them in revenue. This software I have never used before. I've never opened it. I've never logged into it. And somebody on Upwork was looking for support on this. They're like, I've been watching all this stuff. I didn't understand it. And I'm like, I'll try it. So I pitched to him without ever opening the program. I'm like, hey, I'm pretty good at teaching software. I'm sure I could help out. And he's like, sure, we'll try it out. And I'm like, and so I literally found a 2-hour training video, watched it at 2.5 times speed, finished it through, and then hopped on the call within 5 minutes and taught everything I just learned in an hour. And the guy thanked me and said, hey, I just spent weeks trying to learn this stuff, and you just showed me the stuff in, an hour. Like, that was super helpful.
What a value add you just added to that client too.
Yeah. And so when AI came out and I started playing with ChatGPT, I very quickly figured out how it works. So one of my clients, the one that has the $200 a month subscription to them now, he tells me like, oh, I can finally get it to do this. And I'm like, I've been able to get it to do that since the first version. Right. Because I figured out how large language models work just intuitively. Like, it makes sense that this is how they're structured. And so this is how you get the best output. And so I've been training this for a while, probably since I got it. It was like 2021, 22?
Sounds about right.
And so I've been training other people how to use it ever since. The biggest one I tell people, and I kept telling people this because I to be honest, I still don't think I've heard one other person say that they've heard this advice, but I've been telling it long enough. I'm going to keep claiming that it's mine because I never heard any other AI people talk about this. But essentially, the way that large language models work is you have a bunch of information, and then you put in the word Apple, and it looks throughout its whole database.
I've seen those images before. Yeah, I've seen it.
What it connects to. So you have like apple pie, apple crisp, apple bottom jeans, right? You have this whole collection.
An apple fritter.
Yeah, apple fritter. And so what happens is each of those has a percentage likelihood that they would be the next word after the word apple. It picks probably the top 5 and then rolls the dice and picks one. And I know it does that because it has to do it randomly, because you can put the same input twice and get different answers.
Correct.
So what it's doing is it's picking it at random. And then once it picks that word, apple pie, it then goes, okay, what's the next most likely word? Smells, taste, looks. And so it does it again and rolls the dice. And so it does that over and over again to get all these words. So then what I realized was it's doing that on a percentage base associated with that word. So if you just say apple, it's going to find the most related ones. Well, what if I want an apple product, right? Because there's way more blog articles about apple pie just because there's so many food things, right? Then
Exactly. As opposed to a standard apple at the grocery store.
Yeah. So now I have to clarify. No, I mean Apple, the software, or the hardware, the company, the tech company. So once I realize that, I go, oh, so anytime I ask it for anything, I need to make sure I give it reference points so that the circle of words it finds are these words. Because the way I solidified that this is true is I asked it a question. I said, what did I say? I said, what are the 8 biologically driven desires according to Drew Eric Whitman's book, Cash-Advertising? And it said, sorry, we don't have any information on books written after 2017. And I'm like, so I went and found the book, and it's like 2008. Oh, sorry, 2021. Sorry, I said 2021. They didn't have any after 2021. I'm like, definitely wasn't 2021. I pulled it up, it's 2008. I'm like, there's no way they don't know about this. Right. So then I clarified. I go, this is, now I remember. I asked him what the Life Force 8 was, because that's how he calls it in the book. I go, what's the Life Force 8 by Drew Eric Whitman in the book Cash-Advertising? And it said, I don't have anything after 2021. So then I find it as 2008. So I clarified. I go, what are the 8 biologically driven desires of all human beings according to this book that was written in 2008? And it goes, oh, I understand what you mean now. And then found them verbatim from the book, word for word in the same order. And I'm like, okay, what happens is not only does it pick that first word and do it at random, right? Once it picks the second word, it combs out the knowledge and none of this is accessible anymore. Because if all of the data was accessible every time, it would take forever to get an answer. So it has to narrow and cut down the knowledge in order to give you.
It has to have some sort of filtration system to be able to give you accurate information.
So the thing that I figured out that I do every time before I ask it anything is I ask it, who are the top minds in this space, right? So like, let's say, I've got a pet gecko. I want to take care of it. I go, who are the top experts on lizards and reptiles, or like a pet of geckos? And it'll give me some people. I go, take those people and form a mastermind group. Now ask the mastermind my question. And that answer is always 10 times better than if you just asked it the question.
Right.
Because now you're getting advice in the realm of these people. So if I ask that question, it's going to find if those words are near these people and then start there, as opposed to just finding the words anywhere and going in a different direction.
It's a broad base. It's like asking Google, find me a restaurant, and then you get a litany of results on just restaurants, but you weren't specific inside the actual realm of restaurant specifically you were looking for.
Yeah. So that mastermind strategy, I then built it into my custom instruction. So anytime I ask it anything, I go, determine what field of expertise this is, find the top minds in that expertise, take those minds, form a mastermind group, and then consult the mastermind group. So I have that built into every response that I put.
Dylan, I think we need a part 2 just because I want to dive deeper into if I was privileged enough.
Yeah, I love coming on and talking.
Where can people find you? Obviously, you'll never need my help when it comes to the things you've accomplished, but just listening wise, how can people find what you do?
So if they want to listen to other stuff, I actually have, what I've been trying to do is whenever I go on podcasts or I have like blogs that aren't on my own website, I'm sure you found it. You might have actually found it because you found the books on my personal website.
Absolutely.
I have a menu item on my dylanmeislowick.com. So just my name. And one of them says appearances, I think, or press.
Yes, I saw that.
And if you click on that, you'll see all the places that I've talked, one of which I don't have any footage from. I tried to get it from them, but they told me I couldn't because it's technically official training. Mm-hmm. But one of the coolest things I ever got invited to do was I got to speak for the Tennessee Bar Association, and technically I'm an instructor for the Tennessee Bar Association on Web3 and NFT technologies in the sports.
I saw that. And I did see you were with NFTs, but I didn't specifically know about the Bar Association. That is so
Yeah, and that was just a fun networking story, but I won't get into that. But
yeah.
yeah, that's where you can see a lot of the places I am at. And on that same website that just has my name, there's one that on the homepage it says businesses, and you can find my marketing business and every social media platform I'm on, my comic book business and every social media platform I'm on, and same with my music business and all the platforms that I'm on.
I got to tell you, it's been an honor and a privilege, and I love to be able to follow up with this because you have so many different things that interest me, and I'm privileged enough to spend that time to be able to pick your brain. And we're very similar in how we think, and I loved, your approach to not just staring at something, but going deeper inside of what the true meaning really is. And that's really what the purpose of this show is to get people like you who we walk past and may see every single day. And that guy's mind is spinning 100 miles an hour. And you're just like, yo, and then you spend a half an hour and you're like, yo, this guy is dope. This guy's got a brain that just kicks in high gear all the time. And I'm honored to be able to have your time on the T.R.O.N podcast, sir.
It's been awesome. I'll share one awesome piece of advice to your audience.
Yeah.
Something I try to do, I've been doing it for the last 3 years now, is every New Year's, I send a Happy New Year to every single contact in my phone.
No kidding.
I have gotten clients because of that, because there's been people who are like, I've been following you. I forgot about this. I wanted to reach out. And they've messaged me back and calls them. Like when you're talking about that guy walking down the street going, thinking some crazy stuff. One of my past clients, that's what happened. He was like, I got all this stuff I'm working on. I'm like, I happen to know all about all that
right,
stuff.
Right.
Oh, I knew you'd be the guy. Yeah.
And all it took was a text message. Let's have lunch. That's dope, dude. That's awesome. Well, Dylan Meiselwick, thank you so much for your time, for being on the T.R.O.N podcast, and much success to you. Continue, please.
Thank you.